Hello, everyone. It is quite a slow news week this week, and I just got the itch to call Hasan Piker an idiot for another hour. So, if you haven't watched part one of this series, please do go watch part one before you watch this. The link is down in the description. And without further ado, I think we should pick up right from where we left off. So, take it away, Navarra Media.
So sometimes the generic answer to like combating the far right is, well, you need this alliance of the centre and the left. And what you're saying is, well, actually, these people are part of the problem.
Well, I suppose this is why horseshoe theory is just such a popular theory for the centrists, because both sides do unironically say this. And while I do agree there are some left-wingers who are part of the problem, and I also agree there are some right-wingers who are part of the problem, when it comes to the far left or the far right of either side, they will of course put centrists in the enemy camp, and it is a surefire way to never become politically palatable to the masses, because most of the masses are normies and therefore centrists.
As let's say there is a Bernie 2.0 or an AOC style figure who's the Democrat nominee in 2028 or 2032. You've got a strong Labour movement, a strong left media. You think those people would still be, they would be the sort of the final wall of protection, stemming the tide of a rising American working class?
Yeah, this is a classic leftist trope of saying, oh, the centrists are actually just fascists in disguise. And I'll constantly say about these people, about Martin Luther King Jr.'s letters from Birmingham jail, where essentially he's saying the people who are generally politically for the civil rights movement, say, but keep saying that riots are bad and rising up is bad, they're actually helping the enemy. That's essentially what they're trying to say here. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, Aaron Bastani worded that quite badly, so I'm not even sure what the question is, but we'll see how Hasan answers it.
There's a couple different thoughts on this. I think most people are very fiscally progressive in this country.
The thing is, Hasan probably thinks that because he is surrounded by people who are fiscally progressive because he lives in LA.
Alex Perrine has a really good take on this. He says that the most popular politician in America is a faceless, lifeless ballot measure that is not immediately associated with a Democrat.
Okay, interesting take. I do know a lot of people that would rather politics was just sorted out by robots. The problem is that if this is the same thing with socialism, if you just try and have robots telling people what the most efficient way to spend their money is, you will get a completely functionless economy. Because, believe it or not, value is subjective to the marginal utility of goods and services. It is not about the amount of labour you put in. It's not deemed by any particular equation, and the problem with that is if you can't have solid numbers for value going into a system that is trying to sort out the economy, then you're not going to get any sort of good results. Garbage in, garbage out. Basic statistics.
Because those ballot measures, like, they are deeply progressive, like in places like Florida, where they end up voting for Ron DeSantis or where they end up voting for Donald Trump. You will see those exact same elections where people are voting for felon voter restoration, right? That's a huge, incredibly progressive deal.
Well, okay, but you said fiscally progressive at first. That's not fiscally progressive, that's socially progressive. I also highly doubt places voting for Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis are particularly in favour of allowing felons to vote.
You'll see people
here, right?
Yeah, you'll see people vote for marijuana legalization or decriminalization. Florida voted for $15 minimum wage, and that was more popular than Joe Biden and Donald Trump, right?
Yeah, no duh, people are going to vote for things that get them more money and give them things for free. That is one massive criticism from Hans Hermann Hoppe. Or Hopper, I really don't care how you pronounce it. And basically every single political philosopher pre-universal suffrage was making this point, that you essentially just get communism and socialism and it doesn't work because, as Heinlein says perfectly in Starship Troopers, something given has no value. And if there's no value in your vote, you're just going to throw it away in hopes that you get something in return. And anyway, since then they voted in Ron DeSantis, who is on the platform of shoot down the $15 minimum wage law because it's going to ruin the economy.
So obviously people are, when you meet them where they're at, they are very progressive, especially when it comes to fiscal policy.
Yeah, that's because progressive fiscal policy are basically just bribes. This has been the issue in the UK since One Nation Toryism first came in. because Disraeli was basically bribing people with money for votes. And then basically the only thing dragging it back is people not getting these free things when they were younger. You know, no one of boomer age in the UK was on a minimum wage job when minimum wage was implemented. We never used to have minimum wage before like 2002. And so that's the type of people, that's the tide pushing back on it, the people who feel unfairly treated. And you're probably going to see that with student loans being paid off or forgiven or whatever by the American government. People who worked hard to pay it off are going to be very annoyed, and their votes will reflect that.
The voting population, even, which is a little bit wealthier than the average American citizen for sure, even they are more progressive.
I don't really know what he's basing it on, but it is an interview, so I don't blame him for not having these sources to hand. But I don't know what he means by the voting population is, on average, more wealthy than the average American citizen. You have universal suffrage. Everyone can vote. I don't know what the hell he means by that.
But unfortunately, people have no way of like recognizing that, or there is no way of communicating that message out in an effective manner because the Democratic Party is not addressing those needs.
I do always like it when any person ever says, oh, the average person doesn't really know what they want, which I always just see as insulting. I think people do know what they want. I just think people are wrong about what they want when it comes to voting for socialist policies. I understand the intention of their vote is to, you know, have a fairer society, have equality with income, things like that. The thing is that if they saw the consequences of the attempts to implement these policies and understood exactly why it's a direct consequence of these policies, they probably wouldn't vote for them. But if you don't really look into it and, you know, you hate the Tories or the Republicans that much, I can just see why you wouldn't care and would just keep voting to destroy the country.
For that reason, I think like both parties to some respect are serving capital. And that the media is definitely doing the exact same thing. So
okay, so I think Hasan is actually correct there. Yes, both parties are to an extent serving capital. The problem that Hasan has is that he thinks this is just how the world will always work, and the thing is it isn't. The reason you have so much lobbying, the reason you have so many billionaires and millionaires pushing for certain laws and regulations in government is because, frankly, the government has way too much power, and the fact that they have the power to do that means that the capital is being wasted on the lobbying and the bribes and whatever, when really that money should be put into something a lot more productive. But we can't have that because every state seems to basically need to be a massive fascist, centralised regulatory body. And really, if you just gave the government less power to do that, you'd see a lot less lobbying and you'd see the government serving capital a lot less. But socialist ones seem to do the opposite, without realising that you can't just legislate for these companies to give up all their money, because they will fight a war for it.
So it's all messed up. It's all distorted. I'm not exactly positive about the future of American politics.
I don't think I know a single person who has a positive outlook on American politics, UK politics, anything like that. I don't understand how we've managed to get the worst people possible in office. I guess they are literally just NPCs who are there to basically serve capital, and if it's not those types of people, it's the type of people that Hasan likes, like AOC, who are basically just there to be a permanent publicity stunt.
But let's say there was a candidate, they would probably get mistreated, similar to Bernie Sanders, and probably not make it out of the primaries.
Which at least is something you can be quite happy about with the Democratic Party. They're not going full on, let's get an AOC type in. They're actually trying to keep the whip on them and try and keep them from being completely mental. I mean, I know Nancy Pelosi basically had to say to the squad and AOC, you will vote yes on this proposition, otherwise you're out. So while the Democratic Party are pretty bad, at least they're not as bad as they could be. They do actually seem to have some understanding that they need to be palatable to the average American. Anyway, they bring up now that Bernie Sanders came second in the nominee presidential candidate elections, whatever you call them, twice, and go on to say this.
That seems like an interesting and important upsurge and shift in American politics. There's the squad, their status and power can be massively overstated, but again, it's a slight shift.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you think still long term that American institutional politics is still kind of fucked and won't address any of the problems that afflict the country.
I love how their examples for things we want are the absolute worst type of people in politics. Because on one side you got Bernie Sanders, who is quite frankly a politically weak, always has been, old man. And then, although Aaron clearly realises that the squad aren't as influential as he'd want them to be, they're still an example of something that these two want. And thank God that they are not finding any ground anywhere. Thank God that this in the UK ended at Corbynism. Maybe the US need a bigger scare with a democratic socialist to really kick it into gear to get the Democratic Party to die, because that essentially is what is happening in the UK. Or did happen if Boris Johnson and this current Tory government didn't completely screw it up. But at least in the US it's Biden in charge, so he's the one getting the blame for it. So you're going to see a massive upswing in Republican voters.
I think that's the mechanism of control. That's what it's designed to do. Will that stop me from participating in electoralism? Of course not. I do think, especially at the local level, organizing is really, really important.
Hasan, how do you get involved in local politics, aside from being invited to the odd gathering for political higher-ups, most of whom don't know who you are, and most of whom you yourself tend to imply that you didn't make the best impressions with?
We backed some. The DSA in Los Angeles saw a lot of success in the council elections.
Ah, yes, the Democratic Socialists of America. By success, by the way, I don't think Hasan means that any of them are currently sitting on the council seat in Los Angeles. I think it just means that they got more votes than usual. But it's quite hard to tell because it's one of those socialist organisations that's, we're not a political party, we're non-partisan, we're just an organisation. So it's quite hard from election results to see who's actually part of the DSA. But let's not forget some of the highlights from the DSA hustings.
If we want to defeat capitalism, we are going to need a party that will organize working people to fight for the demands that we want and to win socialism. Thank you so much.
Great.
Quick point of privilege. Quick point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Guys, first of all, James Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. I just want to say, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum? I'm one of the people who's very, very prone to sensory overload. There's a lot of whispering and chatter going on. It's making it very difficult for me to focus. Please, can we just, I know we're all fresh and ready to go, but can we please just keep the chatter to a minimum? It's affecting my ability to focus. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. Okay, is there a speaker against name, chapter, pronoun?
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
My God, if the DSA knew Hasan was backing them and that he'd also said certain things in the last part to trans people, I am absolutely certain he would be kicked out. I don't think they'd want his support. Incredible scenes.
I mean, these are gigantic populations, and there's a lot of control that you can take over, especially in I guess relatively easier to beat elections because people aren't really paying attention to them at the national level.
Yeah, this is the height of Hasan Piker's political activism. He doesn't go anywhere, he just sits on his streams and will say every now and then when LA are having an election and say, go vote for the DSA. That's literally it. He won't look outside of LA, he won't look in California, he won't look anywhere in New York, he won't look anywhere in, I don't know, certainly nowhere in the flyover states. So it kind of amazes me that Navarra Media, who honestly do a lot more than Hasan, they'll be on the news panel shows quite a lot. They get invited to write for different magazines and in The Guardian and the Morning Star and things like that. So they do actually do more activity than Hasan does. It's just embarrassing to get Hasan on and be like, oh, what would be a good way to put forward socialist activism? And the only reply is, yeah, vote more. Vote harder, dude.
So I do still think that organizing is deeply important, and I do think that labor organizing on top of that is even more important.
This is a thing that a lot of socialists do. They don't really understand what it means by organise. In the clip I showed of the DSA, they think that's organising, and even during that organising, they will just say, we need to organise to defeat capitalism. And it's just not a particularly descriptive or precise way of going about or communicating what you actually want to do. With the Wellington Project, for example, that is a way of organising. But I don't think we ever used the word organising to describe what we were doing when we were making the Wellington Project. We were saying we want a website where we can write our own articles, hopefully get those seen by quite a lot of people, MPs, people in the media, things like that, and they'll start talking about it. And there's been relative success with that, especially with John's article on the trad tax, which has actually been brought up by Liz Truss. And we know for a fact it's been put in front of the chair of the 1922 committee and the ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer, and hopefully soon it'll be put in front of whoever the new one is. That's doing a lot more than anything Hasan has ever done politically. He just happens to have a big audience of sheep who will vote for whoever he tells them to vote for, until of course they say something he agrees with and then he bans them.
So I still push for that. And I do still push to, go out and vote and try to infiltrate the Democratic Party from within if it's even possible. But
No, it's definitely possible. You're literally watching AOC do it. The problem is that they're idiots and they can't hide their power level. I mean, if you can be that explicit about being a democratic socialist and having absolutely insane policies, most of which thankfully don't get through, of course it's possible to infiltrate, but you're not going to do anything like that, Hasan, and you have no idea how you would do that. That's why you just default to, it might not even be possible. No, it is possible. You can see it happening. But apart from that, yeah, just vote harder.
Those hurdles still exist. And the Democratic Party is infinitely more successful at stopping leftist momentum, squashing that, than channeling that grassroots mobilization power that they have and using that to win elections.
Yeah, I'm not being funny, but from everything we see from the DSA to Democratic Socialists in the Democratic Party, they seem to be really good at shooting themselves in the foot. So I don't think the Democratic Party actually have to do that much beyond saying, I'm more powerful than you, this is the way we're going to vote, when they are trying to be rebellious. And then when they're not, they're basically embarrassing to absolutely everyone who doesn't already like them. I know plenty of socialists that absolutely hate AOC because she thinks that it is basically shooting socialism in the foot. So I'm very happy to keep AOC where she is because she's not only useless, she's actively putting people off socialism.
Look at every single thing that has happened in the Joe Biden term so far. Democratic Party has a basically non-existent majority, but still a majority regardless in the Senate, a majority in the House, and also controls the White House, right?
Oh man, if I were you, I'd wait for those midterms. The amount of propaganda out there showing where Donald Trump was right about Joe Biden's presidency, man, you're going to see a hell of an upswing for the Republicans.
So we should be using the budget reconciliation to push for bills over and over again, to push for the progressive agenda that Joe Biden ran on.
Biden voters posting their L's. Yeah, no, he's going to give you a bit of the stuff you want, a little bit of meat to keep you on board with the Democratic Party. But amazingly, even some Democrats understand what it takes to keep an economy running, especially when they've got the Fed at their fingertips. Unfortunately, they've tried to do it a bit too much and now are suffering the problems of inflation, which is probably only going to get worse, especially if they continue their quantitative easing practices, which is happening all over the world in every central bank. That's why every country in the world is currently suffering from inflation.
And yet, it has fallen short every single time. The $15 minimum wage was brought to the table for a brief moment, but then Senate parliamentarian said that it could not be put in the budget reconciliation.
See what I mean? There are internal workings of the Democratic Party that a lot of people won't see, and they aren't all idiots. A lot of them are, but they aren't all idiots, and that's why it couldn't be put in and passed through. Not just probably because of the economics of it. They probably aren't actually doing it for that. They're probably doing it so that they can say, next time we will put this bill through. Keep giving us votes and we promise you'll get $15 minimum wage. That's probably a bigger reason for it, but at least it's not ruining the economy.
That is a bullshit hurdle that the Democratic Party could have absolutely managed. They could have just fired the Senate parliamentarian like Dick Cheney did back in the day, and then hired a new person. This is not an elected position. This person is not the God King. You could have just totally, if you wanted to, fire the Senate parliamentarian, hire a new one, appoint a new one in that position, and then put the $15 minimum wage in there.
Yeah, but Hasan, if you look a little bit more long term than that, it probably takes quite a lot of political capital to fire the Senate parliamentarian and replace it with someone else. And sure, the person who you replace it with might give you the $15 minimum wage, but then, might also do a load of Republican economic stuff that you don't know about. You never know. And if it was the case that you could just fire and rehire the Senate parliamentarian whenever they did something wrong, they'd probably be replaced every year, if that. Anyway, Hasan then goes into some examples of policing bills and Build Back Better bills not making it through because of the Democratic Party. It's a lot of pointless facts that we should probably all know about anyway, but I'm just trying to save you time here.
So a lot of the promises the Democratic Party made, we haven't seen, and they're not pushing for it. They're not whipping for, enough to get the votes necessary within the slim majority that we have.
Oh, they definitely are. They're just whipping against these things. The whole idea with democracy and the way the playing field's been set out, you are always trying to get more votes. And the thing is, with the average voter, they don't concentrate on this stuff that much. All they will see is that the stuff isn't passing, so the Democrats can say, oh, that's probably because of the Republicans, you need to revote them out. And then that's how they'd get more votes. And that can work for a time. But it's also confusing me as to why Hasan isn't explaining... He's explaining things as they are. He's explaining things that have happened. He's not explaining why he thinks these things are happening, which is why I'm ending up skipping a load of this interview, because it's Hasan just regurgitating things he's remembered from streams.
And at a certain point, you got to realize, like, maybe that's by design. Maybe that is the point. That they just sit back and rely on the Republican Party's brutality to win elections, because ultimately, if they were to genuinely push for policy changes, then some of those are going to hurt those in positions of power.
Again, it's a very, very surface level Marxist reading, and it's not entirely untrue. It doesn't go any deeper than that. You can't find any specifics. It's just big bills I didn't like didn't go through. I think there's some shenanigans going on behind the scenes that it's designed to be that way. Oh, it must be the Republicans dividing people that they rely on. And that's really where the whole thing falls apart. Tories, Republicans, right-wingers, they're not trying to divide the internals of their country. I literally know people that think the Tories are racist, despite the fact that one of the last two candidates for Tory Prime Ministership is Rishi Sunak, an Indian, and the member's most popular candidate was Kemi Badenoch, a black woman. But this is the thing, Hasan will just say, oh, the Republican brutality. Oh, well, give me something. Give me anything that shows me that they're brutal. And it will usually be some crap like the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, or the fact that they're just not conceding any ground to socialism, something like that. It's never anything actually concrete or anything that's actually brutal. It's literally just an NPC response with absolutely nothing backing it up.
I guess what's different between the US and the UK is that, generally speaking, historically, high-income earners vote Conservative, low-income earners vote Labour. It's obviously far more mixed than that, but that's probably the case.
Certainly not the case in the UK after Corbyn. And even then it's not necessarily true. Especially back in the Victorian times, who you voted for was actually quite dependent on your religion. And in fact, the divides of counties in the Civil War back in the 1600s actually still carried on. Those divides were pretty consistent between people who voted Whigs and Tories in the 1800s. So this is the other problem with a Marxist reading of history. It's not true that capital owners and working class people were basically at a class war. Barely anyone thought like that. It is morals and religion that most people are divided on. There are plenty of people who were poor and got rich and are still socialist. It's actually quite little to do with your economic situation.
Whereas historically in the US, you do have a certain patrician elite on the coasts, particularly in the East Coast, that vote Democrat, which you can't really map on here to the UK. And it's true that that's a big structural issue. But at the same time, everything you've just outlined there is hitting the bottom line of the Democrats' ability to get people elected in the midterms this year. Joe Biden's personal approval ratings are historically low. They're worse than Trump's ever were.
They're worse than Trump's.
Yeah.
Biden voters posting their L's. But I can see where Aaron Bastani is trying to go with this. I think he's basically trying to say, why is the party that typically should be for the working class being voted for by a load of rich progressives? And the problem with the Marxist reading of all this is that you cannot make a Marxist reading of that, unless you come up with a load of nonsense that people are being lied to. Which, alright, to be fair, they are, but not in the way that Marxists constantly say, where it's like, oh, Republicans are trying to blame minorities and women and things like that for poor white men's problems. It's just not happening. And even when they bring up Tucker Carlson, they always screw up what he's trying to say. It's really funny.
Which is crazy.
But surely you're a politician, you want to get re-elected, at the very least, because it's a really nice life, and you like the status, you like the money.
Man, it's the same thing with CEOs as well. They always completely underestimate just how hard it is to be the head of a country, to be the head of a business, to be the head of any organisation. It's an awful lot of pressure, and, but you get a load of money, you get a load of status. Yeah, it's not worth it for a lot of people. That's why about half of CEOs suffer from depression.
Surely, just purely by the logic of wanting to be re-elected and holding public office for longer, people would be doing a little bit of what you're saying, or because it seems so irrational. It's like you're handing the midterms to the Republicans on a plate. while doing nothing.
Well, it's the reality that the US already has over 100% of its GDP in debt. And the problem is, if you try and push all this through now, it's probably going to double it again. And the fact of the matter is that the US government cannot afford that, and they probably realise that. And while they're letting all these riots go on throughout America over the last summer and the summer before, that's something that they constantly blame on Republican policy and things like that. But the thing is, they know if they put their own policy through, which causes the middle America to rise and riot because they're being taxed 100% to try and pay for this debt, then that's going to be a much worse situation than losing the White House for another 4 years.
Democratic Party loves not being in power while still holding on to their seats. So if they lose a couple seats here and there and the Republican Party controls the Senate, oh, that's perfect for them. They can just be like, we can't do anything. Look.
It's probably not too far off there, but the thing is, every time they do that, they do seem to swing and get more votes every time. And to be fair, I'm sure that quite a lot of Republican senators and congressmen feel the same way. So Hasan then goes on a massive tirade where he is just again saying that Democrats are very bad at passing their own bills. Again, I thought I'd do you the honour of saving your time. Anyway, he then goes on to say why Republicans are bad.
When the Republicans bring it back to the state legislatures and use the state legislature, which is deeply undemocratic as a consequence of redistricting, which Republicans realize is a really good mechanism of control at the state level, when they've already court packed like crazy and the entire judicial system is like is riddled with activist judges that are reactionary Republican Federalist Society judges all the way up to the Supreme Court, they can do exactly what they've done thus far with Roe v. Wade.
What's really ironic about all that is exactly what the Democrats have been doing as well for years. Each party packs court, each party tries to gerrymander, each party tries to do the little tricks to try and keep themselves in power and keep their policies going through. Roe v. Wade came in the first place by a bunch of Democrat Supreme Court justices, and now, okay, there's slightly more Republican ones. Well, now they do what the Republicans want to do, which is give state rights more emphasis and precedence and try and remove more federal laws that really shouldn't be federal laws. And that seems a lot more reasonable to me than the Democrat way of doing things, which is to make absolutely everything a federal law. But it's weird that Hasan thinks that only one party does this.
What do you think of Nancy Pelosi?
I despise her.
She's 82, right?
Yeah, I think...
Is she going to be there till she's like 100?
I mean,
people say you're being ageist, though. I think that's...
I am. I'm so ageist. I'm ageist and ableist when it comes to politicians.
Oh, yes, I will just react to this again because I enjoyed it so much the first time in part one that I can't stop myself from reacting again. Hasan, you absolute moron. The person you want as President Bernie Sanders is only 1 year younger than Nancy Pelosi. Being ableist as well, my God, man. The DSA would not like him saying anything like that, and that's why he immediately backtracks.
It's like, not ableist in the sense of like, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't be a politician. Obviously, I don't believe that. But like,
so now there are lines of how disabled you can be to be president. If you're in a wheelchair, absolutely fine. I mean, that's why the FDR thing in the first part didn't fly, but it's still quite funny to think about.
Like, yeah, if you have Alzheimer's or dementia, like, you shouldn't be a politician. If you can't drive, you shouldn't be a politician.
There's such a weird two statements to make close together. Because, okay, yeah, it's a joke that Joe Biden has dementia, and he actually probably does have onset early signs of dementia. But 9 times out of 10 people with Alzheimer's and dementia, they're under constant care. There's no way they can be president anyway. And then he brings up the car thing, and I'm still astounded by that. FDR wouldn't have been able to drive a car. What are you talking about, Hasan?
Dianne Feinstein is a great example of this.
She's like 90, right?
She's 88, I think. She's like the second oldest or the oldest senator. She's on the fucking Judiciary Committee. Like, what the hell? Like, she's very clearly, her staffers are like leaking to the media that she has dementia.
I'm actually really, really impressed that no one in Biden's team has leaked that he's having issues. I mean, I remember Hillary Clinton having health issues during the 2016 presidential elections, where she literally had to be hoisted up into a car. But it all seems to be very well kept under wraps, and I think really these things will be leaked when it's time for him to be replaced, which probably will only be with the next presidential election, basically.
It's wild. It's wild that she is still in a position of power. And this is California. All right, these are the California politicians that we have. Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein. That's wild. I mean, California's supposed to be very progressive, right? It's not.
It's such a weird bar again. Oh, by the way, California isn't particularly progressive because, checks notes, we have 2 really old senators or Congress people, whatever. And then all I have to do is point out again when they were singing the praises of Bernie Sanders before, yeah, he's in his 80s. He's old as well. Does that stop him being a progressive person? It's such a really weird thing to say. I mean, over here, this side of the pond as well, Jeremy Corbyn, he's in his 70s. He's still progressive according to Aaron Bastani. Where's the line? Is the line 81?
Do you think Pelosi will just stay there until... Do you think she'll do like Ruth Ginsburg, sort of stay there till... I mean, because she could live, obviously, very affluent country. If you're a healthy person, we've seen this with former presidents, right? You can live
Unfortunately.
Jesus Christ, Hasan. It's really, really not a good look to be on these panels saying, yeah, I hope the old people die. This is what turned a lot of people off Remain, because a load of Remainers went, oh, you see, bunch of old people ruining our country. Wouldn't it be better if they couldn't vote or just died? It's honestly a horrible thing to say. I mean, I don't like these politicians any more than you do, Hasan, because they're Democrats. But my God, I don't want any of them to die.
Because I would say the same thing as you. I personally think we have to have a cutoff. We say if you're below 18 or 16, you can't vote in countries. I don't think we should have an upper limit on voting, but clearly on political representation, I agree with you.
Why not?
Well, I, for one, think the voting age should be higher, but anyway, we're talking about a representation cap. The reason is because people will not develop dementia at that age at all. People's faculties will deteriorate at different rates at different times. Plenty of reasons. I mean, at what point do you take people's right away from being able to represent people? You're never going to come up with an answer as good as, 18 or 21 or 25 for the minimum voting age, because with that, we can say on average by 18, you've gone through puberty, okay, your brain's still developing, but you're basically good enough to be an adult. And then you can go to 21, okay, your brain's developed a bit more, and then by 25, boom, your brain's fully developed. And that makes a lot more sense than, some people get dementia. Some people get dementia in like their 30s, It's really hard to say where the line goes.
But then somebody would say to you, well, Bernie Sanders is older. Bernie Sanders is what, 79?
I'm willing to lose out on Bernie if it comes down to it.
I don't understand why he assumes that people under... I mean, I assume the cut-off point's going to be 75 with that example. Does he think they're all super progressive? I mean, Ron DeSantis seems to be the new Hitler in America, and he's, 43 years old? I'm not entirely convinced by the whole, when people are young, they're socialists, when they're older, they get more conservative. I don't think that's ever been the case. I think it's just a cope that a lot of people were putting out recently because Corbyn nearly got in. But I don't understand why they think that getting rid of old people will improve the situation anyway, even from a socialist point of view.
I think, ultimately, if you cut off 65 plus, you would dramatically alter the way elections run in this country.
Half the Senate is over 65, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the whole reason they want that, is because they think most of the over 65-year-olds are the ones pushing against their progressive agenda, and I would hope they are. But a lot of them probably experience FDR's terrible push for the New Deal. These were people who, throughout their lives, grew up in the political system and they know it well. The thing is, if you make the cut-off point at 65, it's okay, you'll get quite a few experienced people, but these people really are experienced. And that's probably a good reason to keep them in, to be honest. And if you think it's due to corruption that they're still in there, well, all you're going to have is corruption then just going down the ladder, and then a load of people you'll see in their 40s getting a shed load of money from corporations to be put on Senate seats and Congress seats to then put forward bills that the corporations want. So it doesn't actually solve the problem. And it's a problem that I'm not really understanding from you. It's some people have dementia, we've got one example, and it's not even the president, which is the obvious one. So, what do you actually want from this? Because I'm not understanding it.
Which is crazy.
It's a gerontocracy.
Yeah, and the average age in the US
terrible.
is 38. It's like a young country.
Yeah. Yeah, relatively.
Younger than Italy or whatever,
Yeah.
Japan.
Yeah, definitely younger than Japan. It's ridiculous.
Well, that is just a representation argument, isn't it? It's like saying, well, we've got 10% of a country that's non-white. Why are 99% of the representatives white? And then turns out the answer is, well, people in the government tend to also have been natively born because they've lived here all their lives and managed to get into government. However, you give it 40 odd years, you'll probably see that 10% rise in government jobs from the minority population. But the thing is, with age, that will never happen. But instead, all you're going to do is cut off people's career at a really arbitrary point when they're probably perfectly capable of carrying on the job, unless you're someone like Joe Biden or the other example they brought up before. It's just a classic millennials hate their parents moment, despite the fact that Hasan relies on his mum to cook him chicken.
I mean, I don't believe in like the any sort of dynamic of like generational dynamics are not as important. I think, even though there is a generational divide in the way that people vote, certainly, but I'm not like a firm believer that the next generation is going to save us. They're not.
Jesus Christ, Hasan's more black-pilled than most of the dissident right. But he is wrong. Age is really a big divider these days on who you vote for. That seems to be true, especially in the UK and the US. It's more than likely down to the education system, but I think it's something that's worth looking into.
There's plenty of reactionary idiots in my generation and even younger generations as well.
Hello, Hasan. I know you mean me, but there are people way worse than me out there too, who are my age and younger.
What's the average day in the life of Hasan Abi?
Christ, this will be a good one.
I wake up at 6. I start reading the news. I start listening to news broadcasts to figure out what's going on. Start building an outline for what I'm going to cover on the show that day.
Right, I already don't believe this, because Mauler went through an entire stream of Hasan's and through many others just in the background while he was doing his work on editing, and basically his summary of it is he just doesn't seem to know what he's talking about, and when he is there, usually it's a load of links in the chat that are people saying, hey, come on, read this out for us, watch this, steal other people's content. I mean, I just find it very hard to believe that. I mean, I can believe he wakes up at 6. I do not believe for a second that he wakes up at 6 and dead on 6 he's getting news broadcasts up, he's flicking through the news to see what he can talk about in the stream. Because I don't even do that.
Go work out, come back from working out.
Now, this part I believe, and I wouldn't mind if he just said, oh yeah, I just go straight up and straight to a workout, because I could just completely believe that. I mean, credit where credit's due with Hasan, he clearly works out, and that's fine. But the man is clearly work shy, especially from the arguments he presented to go against J and EFAP. Man, audience, you better understand how good you got it with me. I just cut out 3 minutes of Cenk and Aaron having a pretty gay moment talking about bench pressing and the type of works out they do. I mean, look, I'm all for doing exercise and stuff, but man, I just do sports and go running a couple of times a week. And I got a couple of weights that I just lift up every now and then. I don't need this whole regime with it, and I certainly just did not find any interest listening to that. So anyway, let's get back to the person of interest and what he does with his day that isn't a workout.
So you work out, you do your compound exercises, now functional stuff with your personal trainer, you go back home, then what?
And then I click start streaming. I start at 11 a.m. Pacific, and I go for like 7-8 hours every day.
That's it. Day in the life for Hasan. Wake up, work out, stream. I really wish my life was that easy, but unfortunately I'm a much more interesting person.
And the first 4 to 5 hours is usually just straight up news coverage. Most important stories of the day, hit as many as I can. And then afterwards, I'll transition into like lighter stuff, memes. Sometimes we like to uncover old TV shows that are problematic, that I love to watch, things like that.
He's obviously not going to mention it, but it has been a massive criticism of him that he will find TV shows such as Hell's Kitchen, and when he's going through news stories, he will just put on a whole episode of John Oliver and just leave. He will literally just leave the stream. There will be an empty chair, no reaction. It will just be other people's work up on stream for other people to watch with absolutely not even the slightest bit of credit given to the person who put the effort in. I mean, to be fair with John Oliver, it's obvious. It's John Oliver, it's a network TV show. But the thing is, it's still completely illegal to stream John Oliver's show to a stream to millions of people when Hasan put no work into it. It completely infringes copyright. But if you're interested in that side of Hasan, I'd suggest you watch the EFAPs featuring the panel going through Hasan's streams, because not only are they the funniest thing I think I've seen on YouTube, it gives you a really in-depth look onto how to be the worst person on the internet, aside from Hunter Moore, obviously.
With the community, making jokes about it, doing commentary around that as well, and then play some video games too.
Not gonna lie, it is actually my dream job to just have a 2 and a bit hour stream going through the news every day, and then a 4-hour stream gaming every day. I think I would genuinely love a life like that, where I'm paid to do all that, and I'm actually interesting and don't come across as a complete moron when I do it. Unfortunately for Hasan, he's not self-aware enough to realise how stupid he does come across sometimes.
And so you stream for, you said 7 hours?
7 to 8 hours. It used to be a lot more back in like my average every single day. I streamed every single day between 2020 and 2021, pretty much every single day. And my average came down to 10 hours a day in 2020.
Now that to me just seems excessive, but the reason it seems excessive to me is because whenever I stream, I make sure I am either there entertaining the whole time, or I have a panel there with people, so if I need to go off and do something, toilet, something like that, there will be people there to actually cover and keep the conversation going. Hasan doesn't do that. And in fact, the only time I can think of where I was streaming for a very long time is the 24-hour stream I did about a year and a half ago at this point. And the first 10 hours, I was actually all right. But I think if I knew that I had another 10-hour stream the day after, I would have struggled. But again, I'm not like Hasan, who leaves his chair for up to 40 minutes at a time. So really, when he says, yeah, I'm working for 8 hours a day, it's probably closer to 6. And he just has really long breaks and keeps his stream going while he steals other people's content.
And what did that do to your mental health? Because there's one interview where you describe yourself as, I think I may have the quote here, you describe yourself as having brain worms.
Oh, do I do, yeah.
You have brain worms.
I'm brain rotted, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this is another one. I highly doubt that's due to the streaming. I think that is pretty much entirely just because Hasan is literally an idiot. I mean, you see his videos at TYT before he even started streaming. Yeah, he was lower than the average IQ at TYT, which is pretty low.
Well, so what did that do to your mental health, being online 10 hours a day every day? That's quite...
It's probably not good. Not good at all. But it works. I think that's like my competitive advantage that other people don't have, because people are always like, how do you do it? Like, how could I start doing it? And I'm like, try, but it's not going to happen.
I think that's the other thing he tries to do, and this does come off from his other behaviour as well. He seems to want to be the only Twitch streamer around. I genuinely think he must have friends outside of Twitch in LA that he just spends his time with, who are basically people he works out with, because from the sounds of that, I mean, he streams every day, apart from 1 day a week now, I think. And from the sounds of that, it's just get up, work out, do the stream, bed. I mean, it must be that. And so really, when it comes to his social life, he's sorted it. He'll just keep being a gym bro with other gym bros, and he seems happy with that. But he never seems to be on other people's Twitch streams. He very rarely debates, and when he does, he's an absolute useless fart. I mean, just look at the Destiny debate against Sargon and Nick Fuentes, and Hasan was there ruining Destiny's position, basically by being the internet version of AOC. So when other people are like, how do you do it? I mean, really, if you watch his streams, it's pretty easy. You just get stuff up, you barely react, you barely say anything. When you do, it's entirely made up stuff that you're completely wrong about, such as something like this.
And Hitler invaded countries based on Germanic ties at first? Yeah, dude. Talk to me when he's fucking throwing Ukrainians in a fucking... What are you talking about? Talk to me when he's throwing Ukrainians at a concentration camp, okay? Hitler wasn't fucking bad because he decided to invade Austria. He was bad because he was fucking killing Jews, okay? That was the problem. He wasn't like, oh yeah, we're gonna fucking annex territory with like Germanic people in it. That wasn't the main problem with Hitler, I think.
The I think at the end always gets me. That's his way of saying, oh yeah, I was wrong, well it doesn't matter. Yeah, well you just went on a minute-long tirade about why you thought Hitler was bad, and you were completely wrong about why we went into World War II. Like, the man grew an audience, a massive audience, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month by constantly being wrong, and constantly not even being on stream. Am I envious of that? Yeah, obviously. I put work into my channel. I put work into the Wellington Project, and I'm not making any money off it. So obviously there's a bit of envy there, but when he's blatantly breaking the law as well as he's doing it, and then acting like he's doing nothing wrong, and then saying to other people as he has the easiest job in the world, oh yeah, you can try it, but it won't work out, it does actually quite annoy me. And if it doesn't annoy you, I have no idea why.
You're not going to sit there for 8 hours a day and talk to hundreds of thousands of different people and like parse through all of this information on the internet.
To be fair here, Hasan, you don't sit there for 8 hours a day either. And then when you are sat there, I mean, this was a really funny anecdote from Mauler. When he had your stream on and was listening to it, after a while he'd realise, oh, he's not said anything. And sometimes he'd look over and sometimes you wouldn't be there, as you'd expect, but sometimes you were actually there just not saying anything. So don't give me this crap that it's 8 hours of you talking constantly. Because that's obviously not the case. Everyone can watch any one of your streams and find that. I mean, I remember when I was looking at your stream for one of the EFAP videos I did, and when I randomly went on it, you weren't there. I mean, it's not like he's not there for the full 8 hours. It is probably at the most about an hour and a half he's out of his chair, and that might be on a bad day. But to sell it as, yeah, I'm there for 8 hours giving this really concise information and expert political analysis to people, it's just horse shit. It's not true. It's not what he does.
And people have commented on that. They say, wow, his ability and aptitude in doing this is kind of, I've never seen anything like it.
I mean, that was EFAP's reaction. They had indeed never seen anything like it. Even the old reaction, Jinx, they went through his videos and they pointed out that at least his reactions are lame, but at least he's on screen the whole time, and at the very least, he puts at the top of his description the video he was reacting to. But they literally did say they've never seen anything like it with Hasan because it is so inept and so against what a stream should be about.
Yeah. And that, you know, it's talked about by legacy media as like a really impressive form of political journalism.
Yeah, it is impressive. He says absolutely nothing of value. Even in this interview alone, when he's talking about his own life, there's nothing of value here. And when he was going on about the American left, there were a couple of good points he made, but he couldn't develop them in any meaningful sense. He just basically kept repeating himself, but I had to take those clips out because I'd just be saying the same thing back.
Is that like a skill set you had as a kid? Were you able to just like process lots of information?
Yeah, it's called ADHD.
Right.
That's my skill.
Yeah, well, that explains why you don't say much when you're watching other people's work and why you just leave the stream sometimes, I suppose.
Is that I just, you know, that's my hyper focus, I guess. I can just sit there and look through so many different articles and, you know, offer my feedback on it nonstop for hours.
It's just getting tedious at this point, but yeah, lie.
And then what do you do to relax after 7-8 hours of streaming?
I don't know. Sometimes I watch anime or TV shows. That's what I do for the most part. I used to go out. I don't really do that anymore. So that's all I do, really. That's how I unwind.
Hey man, what's your hobby? I get up in the morning and work out, and then I pretend I'm a political pundit for 4 hours, and then I game, and then I watch anime. I just couldn't imagine having a life like that. I mean, I could probably stream for 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday, maybe. But I need a proper weekend. I'd need to make time for my family and friends. I need time for my hobbies, my other hobbies, I should say. Hasan, clearly here, he actually seems quite lonely. I actually feel quite bad for him because it can't be a nice life doing this. And maybe he only started streaming and doing this because maybe he does actually struggle to make friends. I don't know. Because if the clips from Twitch or anything to go by, whenever he's insulting someone, he means it. Whereas with me, every time I insult someone, I only mean it jokingly. I never want anyone to take any of my insults seriously. Even people I don't like, I don't mean my insults. I say it as part of it's part of my personality, I guess. I think it's good to have these little jabs at each other that don't really mean much. It's a bit like, you know, when you punch someone in the arm or something. It doesn't mean anything. But I don't think Hasan ever sees any insult like that. And he's even seen people praising him and taking it badly. I have no reason to think that he'd take it any differently in personal relationships offline. So, you know, I feel kind of bad for him here. Honestly, I do. You single?
Right now, yes.
You don't go out and you're single? Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah.
You need to, well, you know, before you know it, you're old and people are less interested. 15 years' time.
It'll be all right.
You'll be fine.
I'll be fine, I think.
Even Aaron's surprised here, because Aaron is a married man, which, you know, congratulations to him. But, you know, Hasan's 31, and, you know, at that age for a man, you probably should be trying to get out on the dating market somehow. But as Aaron said, it's like, you're not going out, you're single, and you have the saddest life I can think of. It's a nice way of saying, please go out, make friends, get a girlfriend, you virgin. And the thing is, you can't even call Hasan a virgin because he's shagged prostitutes, as he openly states on his streams.
It's interesting as you get older, like, 'cause now I'm 38, and it's interesting, there were friends in your mid-20s who were just like, obviously the centre of attention for a bunch of reasons, and it's just like, age is so strange, and now they're like completely unremarkable to anybody, and like they're 40.
I can't tell if this is Aaron trying to make a prediction of Hasan. I don't think it is, but it'd be really funny if, 4 to 9 years from now, when he's 35 to 40, Hasan does just lose relevance. I mean, seriously, what's he going to do then? Because he's not going to be a millionaire forever. Unless he hires a personal accountant, there's no way he's smart enough to hold on to the money.
Well,
really weird.
I care more about I guess I care more about like what I'm doing than anything else. You know what I mean? So that's my focus. I have while I have my mental faculties intact and I can do this, I want to do it for as long as I can.
Absolutely crazy to me that was his takeaway from that. He really does have a completely different outlook to what he thinks he does compared to what he actually does. At best, he's influencing hundreds of thousands of young adults in the US and the UK to keep voting for leftist parties. And that's about all he's doing. But the information he's giving to them is probably making them dumber, because the information he's giving to them and the takes he's giving to them is wrong. Or probably the most charitable way I can say it, you can pick a load of holes in it. He never seems to admit when he doesn't know something, which is something I make sure I make it clear in a video if I don't know something. And I have no idea what he would be a voice of authority on other than, well, working out. Whereas I have my geology, science. I made sure to do a load of reading on history and economics, and of course political theory. So I have some authority on that because I've done the reading into it. Whereas in the previous part, when Hasan was going through books that people should read, he could barely name a book. He named Das Kapital and then said, don't read it, watch lectures instead, or listen to people talk about it instead. And it's just, I think that's because that's what he does. He has no desire to grow his brain or develop his learning in any way. All he wants to do is do what he's doing now, get away with as many bad takes as possible, although he thinks they're good. Keep doing the streams because it's hardly 8 hours of proper work, is it? Make millions from that and just keep ignoring the criticisms and the fact that people keep saying that he's just a terrible person. And hey, if he's making the money, why should he listen to anyone? People are stupid enough to give him money, why would he stop? Anyway, that's enough of this part for now. I thought I was going to do this in 3 parts, but there's so much to talk about, it's probably going to end up to 4 or 5 parts. But keeping these under an hour are what I'm happy with, so this will be the end of part 2. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.